Well, good day everyone. We're talking with the gas man Gavin Migro today about his career on the racetrack and also admin and speedway manager a little bit later on. So we'll start off, Gav. How were you as a kid? Were you a good kid or were you a bit of a rat bag?
I'd like to think I was a good kid. I think I was a bit of a mummy's boy, I think. I used to pretty much glued to my mum all the time. I didn't really like to be too out there.
Yep.
But obviously with growing up and Dad going and commentating like motocross and road racing and around the houses and all that sort of stuff, I was always glued to him as well doing that. So always, if he'd go and do a race meeting in Collie or Bunbury or whatever, or Geraldton, I'd go with him, you know. So
Yep.
it was a pretty cool childhood, really.
Yeah, what was it like growing up being a Migro? Your dad was very famous in the West Australian scene, not just in speedway, but in politics and all kinds of stuff. He was, a high-profile person. Was it hard growing up being a Migro?
Not really. I mean, I think he's a really good dad. Like he very encouraging and loved being with his boys, you know, and with my brother Steve, and he coached footy with my brother's team at the Bayswater Morley Junior Footy Club, and they were undefeated for 3 years. 3 premierships in a row and stuff like that. So, and he coached some older boys as well. That were involved in speedway back in the days as well. So he was a bit of a celebrity, so they thought it was pretty cool. And as he does now, he had nicknames for everybody, and the kids. He was a bit king of the kids, really. So it was a great time, and look, there was no really. I mean, we were kids; we didn't really know. I mean, there's obviously politics in speedway and that sort of stuff as him being the boss. But the reality is, we were pretty removed from that, so we didn't really know that sort of stuff. You know, he kept us pretty much at arm's length on that sort of stuff. So, you know, like we just had a great childhood, you know, getting to, quite often we'd have our racing heroes come over.
Yeah.
We'd get to, in school holidays, we'd just live at the showgrounds.
Yep.
Ride motorbikes around, which was completely stupid and madness. And if my kids did that, I'd kick their butts. But yeah, we had a great childhood with that sort of stuff. It was really good.
With the people coming over, I remember a little story that you were saying about like Ivan Major, one of your heroes, everyone's hero really, and how you wanted him to go down to Speedway and have a look. Would you like to share that one with the
well, every year Ivan would come to Perth, and Dad would pick him up from the airport, and we'd be just absolutely, couldn't wait. And before Ivan always came, a box would arrive, like a massive big box, and it would usually have 2 or 3 bikes in it. All his leathers, all his equipment, all that sort of stuff would all arrive. And we would, Steve and I couldn't wait to almost open it, you know what I mean? But it wasn't ours to open. But the box would sit there for a month or so before Ivan get there. Ivan would get there, we'd go there and say, the first thing I always used to say to Ivan is, do you want to go to the track? You want to go and have a look at the track? And Ivan always used to turn to me and says, Gavin, when you get to the end of the straight, do you turn left? And I went, yeah, of course we do. And he goes, well, then I don't need to see the track. He was always, he was going to be plenty of time for him to do that. Yeah. And he would always go to practice and then do more laps when it was 40 degrees than anyone that you can ever imagine.
Yeah, wow.
Even when quite often he'd come to Perth, well, not quite often, but a few times he'd come to Perth and he'd been injured on the continent, riding in Europe. And one time I remember him arriving and Dad carried him in. He couldn't walk. He'd broken his ankle and leg terribly. Terrible, horrific injury.
But he still made the effort to come.
He knew that this is how long he had to rehabilitate. So what he would do is, and when he was at the right time, he would say, righto, let's go to the beach, Gavin. Show me to the beach. So I'd drive down with Ray, his lovely wife, who's just still a lovely friend of ours, and we would go down Morley Drive to Scarborough Beach, pull up there, get out of the thing, and I didn't really want to go to the beach. I wasn't a beach guy. I wanted to
go to the track.
I wanted to go to the Speedway with Ivan, not to the beach. Yeah. So we'd go there, and Ivan driving my mum's car, park there, and he'd like limp down with crutches down onto the beach, and he'd say, I'll be back. And he would walk an hour north, an hour in the sand like this, and then he'd come past us an hour, like an hour, so half an hour and an hour back, and then he'd walk another hour south and come back, and then he'd go, okay, Gavin, take us home, like show us home now. And I think I was 9 or 10 years of age, and
you wouldn't have fully understood it, but you probably really appreciate it now.
Oh, I can't believe it. But what he did is he walked in the thickest sand so he could get the mobility in his ankle. And I think now what the athletes do today, they're doing those things, and he was doing it in the 70s, and just an amazing man. And he used to sit there and tweak his bikes and that sort of stuff. And the only thing he would never let me and Steve be around, and not that we knew, but we weren't allowed to be around when he did his carburetors.
Is that right?
He said, off you go. All right, no worries.
He had his little secret.
Yeah, perhaps. But he had this amazing book, and he had all these things that he used to do, and he always bring us a little bit of a little prezi, for when we come to Perth. It was usually a t-shirt or hat, and he gave me every hat that he had, and I had the champion hats and Ricard hats, and all these sponsors that he'd give me the hats, and that's why I'm a hat lover now. I got thousands of the bloody things, So
I'm sure Jackie's happy with it.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit to your Formula 500 career.
Yep.
You actually first run was at Bibra Lake Speedway, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I tried to do a little bit of research here.
Yep.
With Shane Murphy.
Correct. So my brother-in-law were looking to do racing and stuff like that, and Steve had been riding motocross. I'd done a little bit of motocross, wasn't very good at it. I did BMX, I was half okay at that, but I sort of wanted to race, and I was 15, and we went to a picnic day at Bibra Lake, and Dad took me there with Mum, and Shane Murphy had been racing that day, and they had a mechanics race. And they said, next thing you know, I got Shane's suit on, I got his helmet on, and we got pushed down the track and onto the track, and we did a race, and I ended up winning the mechanics race. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is just unbelievable. I want to do this.
How easy is this?
So we started sniffing around, and we looked at go-karts and stuff like that, and I thought, and I don't mean to be derogatory towards go-karts, but I'm thinking, it's all weekend, it's all day,
Big fly.
2 days, it's just everything. And I really knew our lifestyle, like our family's lifestyle, was not really going to cope with that. Dad's not mechanically minded, but I figured, if we could get into Speedway, maybe I could have a crack. And next thing you know, I ended up buying a Formula 500 from Brian Mullings. He's a good friend of Dad's, and the liaison officer for the Formula 500s at the time, and the old BHM. He sold me his spare car, and I paid $600 for the rolling car.
Yep.
And Dad actually used to sponsor riders with engines, like every once in a while. So he'd have a solo engine, and he happened to have an engine that Glyn Taylor had used and Glenn Doyle had recently used. So I ended up with this 4-valve Jawa that I ended up using, and I started racing with it. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a time bomb. It was a bit of a hand grenade. It just kept blowing up. But it was really cool. So that gave me my start in racing. I had a mate, Mark, who used to drive me around because I didn't have a car license. I rely on that.
15, something 16.
Yeah, still 15. So I just started racing at Bibra Lake, and the really good thing about Bibra Lake, it's such a wonderful thing. It's so sad that it's gone. Really, I mean, I know time moves on, but the good thing about it with Formula 500s is that you couldn't race at Claremont unless you got a competition licence.
So I had to qualify into that field. Yeah.
So you couldn't run state titles or blue ribbon events. You had to run at Bibra Lake. You were, like a division, a big B grade, I think it was. And when you run, then the chief steward would sign off on your licence. So it put you under really good pressure. I think it was good. I think it was healthy because it did
something to strive for.
Made you be smarter. So we raced, and then I got signed off relatively quickly. I think I finished in the championship. I didn't do the full season because my focus was to save my money to go to Claremont. And I ran the half season because they used to run the half season and then the next year the other half of the season. So I ended up I think I finished third or something like that in the B grade or whatever. But I'd already been signed off on, so I was able to go state titles in my first year and go to Claremont. And I think my first ever state title was at Mount Barker Speedway, and that was pretty cool. We did Darkin, which was the short circuit racing, that was really cool. And then we'd run the last night of the Claremont season, and in that first year. And I thought, if we go okay, we might go to the national championship. I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought it was a really cool thing to do. So I end up getting. We finished the night, and then Phil Myers, a great family friend of ours, Flyers Myers. I'd probably give him the shits really, but I end up having my Formula 500 at his workshop for a whole week before I went to the Australian title, and he completely set the car up because he knew independent suspension with his Jag that he had, and his rally and all that sort of stuff.
Australian title in Murray Bridge?
No, the first one was at Newcastle.
Yeah,
and then so we did that. And then travelled over there, and Johnny Anderson is my Formula 500 hero. He was just amazing, great fella too. And JA used to repair my car and do all that sort of stuff when I'd crashed it or whatever, and he was just amazing what he did. But Phil Myers sort of did these little tweaks on it, and then so I went to the Australian title at Murray Bridge, and I'd got another engine that Glyn Taylor had done, which was one of Dad's Westlake engines. Mm-hmm. And the thing was a bullet, and I sort of went over there with no expectation. I'd actually just chucked my job in, and I'd sort of was in a little bit of a limbo, and I thought, I'll just go that was Newcastle. We went and did that. When I came back, then I sort of chucked my job in the next year, and then we ended up going to Murray Bridge. So I think we made the repechage of Newcastle. It was quite amazing, great little speedway. Pity it's gone from the sport, but and then we went to Murray Bridge the next year, and Phil Myers did the setups and all those sorts of things on the car, and I ended up going to Murray Bridge, and I ended up qualifying equal second with about I think 3 or 4 other guys, but they used to do the starts were three wide.
Yeah, crazy.
So I ended up on the inside second row, which was perfect because the guy on the front row had a problem. The car didn't start, so I almost started on the pole. So and Des Ferris was on the front row as well. So Des is a good mate of mine as well. So it was pretty cool to do that. But last I saw Des was when I looked at his under tray as I went past him. He was bicycling up, and
he was a good peddler in his day too.
Very, very good. And so we led for a while, and then end up running third. So which was pretty cool for I think it was. I didn't even have a driver's license anyway, so I think I was 16 or 17 or something like that. But it was a wonderful experience. It was really cool.
That's amazing. And then did you go from relatively quickly into the speed cars with Kim Ledger with the Roble Motoration team? I should get it right in the middle, but Mobile Rotor Motion team.
Yeah.
And with teammate Graham Jones.
Yeah. So when I got back, Kim actually said, come and work for me. So I went and worked for him. I was his service advisor. Book all the jobs in, order the parts, those sorts of things. Yep. And I really, it was a cool job. I was there with Kim. He's a great guy. Looked after me for 6 years. And when we were there, he created this new speed car team. Well, he basically had a car that he'd been running, but the speed car was going to happen. The team was going to happen the next year. Yep. And he said, you want to have a drive? And I said, yeah. So I had a drive. I think I drove 2 or 3 times before the season I ran full time. Yep. So I did a little bit of double duty back when no one knew what double duty was. So we ran the speed car. It was an amazing car. It was a Volkswagen car, Autocraft Volkswagen, with a Gardner car, parallel bar car, and the most ruthless, nasty race car that you could ever drive. But amazing if you got them right. Yeah. But when they were bad, oh my God. But I didn't. I think I was 17, 18, but I didn't, 17, 18, so I didn't really know any different. Yeah. So Kim let me drive the car, and it was just, I've never felt anything so exhilarating. It was just this amazing thing. And so the next year, Kim did a sponsorship deal with Mobile. Yep. His business, Rotor Motion. So we had the Mobile Rotor Motion racing team. And Kim had, obviously, Graham Jones, his number 1 driver, and I was the 3rd stringer. And Trevor Henderson was using rotary engines at the time, and he was the 3rd teammate. And so it was a really very professional looking outfit.
It was awesome when it came out. I remember as a kid, just seeing the 3 cars, how professional it was, and the colours and the photos, and it was probably, you know, next level for that time.
Absolutely, and we had you know, we had uniform race suits and the uniforms and the helmets painted and everything like that, and it was really cool because, you know, my road racing hero was Peter Brock, and you could sort of, you know, we had the same race suit as Brocky and had the same helmet painted and all that sort of stuff. So that was really cool. And so we ran and ran the year, and it was a real roller coaster because it was the car, a very twitchy car, and being young and impatient. You know, like I was sort of pushing it hard, and I crashed a few times, being young and brave, but I, you know, when leading into an Australian title was at Claremont, and we qualified for the title. We dropped the heat, had a magneto issue, but one of the heat races that I won, Jonesy had set the car up, and I don't think Kim was that happy because Jonesy set the car up. I was really struggling with it, and Jonesy set the car up. And it was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. So I smashed the track record, the 10-lap track record, but he's such a good mate that the very next heat race he went and broke the track record. So it never
give you any glory much.
Didn't even go in the program, you know. So it was noted and then moved on, you know. So we got to hear the trumpets play. I guess that was a pretty cool thing. But so yeah, we ran and we qualified. If we didn't drop one of the heat races, we probably would have, the way I used to do inversion, I used to invert the top 8 or 10. I think it was 8. And then if we didn't do the inversion, if I'd finished that heat race, I would have actually started on the front row. But I ended up starting out of 9 or 10 or something like that, and just struggled. Like the track was like gut slick, and I was actually being really conservative. And in the end, I sort of got grumpy and started gassing it and pushing it, and then I remember thinking, oh, it's great, I'll finally get in this thing. I started passing cars again, and then I relaxed and reversed it into the fence. So I just a bit of a dick move, really. So, but yeah, it was just a great thing, and ended up winning. I think it was a Division 3 trophy, which was really quite cool, and won Rookie of the Year. So I'd won Rookie of the Year in formulas, then won Rookie of the Year in speed cars, and it was one of those wonderful things because you can only get it one crack at it, and I was able to get the both of them. So for mine, it was just a wonderful time. And then Kim really wanted to back it up a little bit. He was like a little bit too
a lot of money.
Yeah, and understandably. So we'd actually we were going to go back Formula 500 racing. So I was building a car when Kim started driving a new car anyway, and then Kim said, look, I'll get you an engines because it was cheaper than racing a speed car, understandably. So we ended up buying a Godden from Bob O'Leary, and but we never ever used it because we ended up moving it to, Billy Broadwood ended up buying it, and he went up and smashed every track record with the thing because I never used it. So I actually touched it, we owned it, and then handed it over, and Billy won everything with that thing, you know. So it was pretty amazing because what actually ended up happening is Martin Lawton, we were friends. My Uncle Greg was friends with, were good mates with Brian Sadler, and I spoke to Brian about could I get a drive, and he said, nah, not yet, you know. And I said, could I have a drive? No, not yet. Because I'd known Brian since I was a little tacker, when Tony Matter used to pick me up after T-ball and all those sorts of things, you know. And then Martin Lawton said, "Oh, do you want to have a drive and with a sprint car?" And I thought, well, yeah. So I went to Ellenbrook, and Martin had done a bit of a tweak on the fuel injection, and I hopped in this thing, and it took off like it just like I got no idea what I'm doing, and we're in the pits, and I banged into a trailer and popped a tyre, and so there's a bit of an exclusive for you. Had a bit of a giggle, and that's why we don't start cars in pits. And so Martin said, don't worry about it, it's all right, it's fine, you know. So we did it. We ran the whole winter season. And Martin's just a lovely guy. So only speaking to him this week, it's actually wonderful. I love speaking to him. He gave me my first sprint car opportunity, so I'm in debt to that, you know.
Yeah, sure.
And he said, oh, you know, we'll go to Claremont. And I said, oh, look, I really do want to, but I knew that the car was not quite there. And Martin, you know, bless his soul, he said, right, okay, well, so he ended up buying an OTR chassis from Martin Horrobin. And it was the sister car to the black 6 car that Ian Bradford ran. So it was chassis number 67. I still got that rattle in my head. Okay. And the Bonza Bradford black car, the KJ Marriott car, was chassis number 68.
Okay.
So I ended up driving both those cars too, so that's pretty cool. But so we drove that car, and Matt had a great steering box because Martin had a power assisted steering box in his other car, and at Northam we raced there a few times for they had a King of Wings event back in the day. Yeah. But as the day went on, the power assisted shaft, you'd get to the start finish line and basically turn, and then it would lock, and then you'd drive straight across the infield and come out in turn two. And
so you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, so being 19 years of age and sort of strong for a little while, but then after a while you'd start to struggle. So we ended up going sprint car racing, and it was just wonderful. I mean, Martin, we were low budget. I bought some sponsors got some sponsorship. Mobil came on board and gave us fuel and oils and stuff like that. Was really good, and we won a feature in our first year.
Yeah.
I think I ran the very, very first ever World Series sprint cars race at Claremont Speedway.
Yeah.
And Alf Barbagallo won that race. I didn't make the show because I crashed in the B main.
Okay.
That was my first rollover in a sprint car, and it was. I look back now and I laugh because it was pretty humorous. But
what happened?
When we were loading the car, I said to Martin, and he's probably going to hate this bit, but I said to Martin, "What's that thing there?" And the nut on the panhard bar was the rose joint was flogged out.
Yeah, right.
And he goes, "Oh, when we get to the track, I'll replace that, And I'd been to Jeff Murphy's, and I'd bought a brand new Goodyear M40 with and it was back then, so that's 1987. It was $340 back then.
Wow.
And there was this Goodyear M40. So I went and bought this tyre. I used some of my wages, and I used, and a couple of guys gave me 100 and stuff like that. So I went and bought this tyre. And Martin put it on the car for the B main because we had to make it. So I was in a transfer spot, and I remember going down the main straight at Claremont, and I was thinking, I'm gonna make the show, and because we never had B mains because we didn't have enough cars, And I remember getting to the end of the main straight, and the car just shook and then just went straight ahead. And I thought, oh, this is not in the brochure. This is going to hurt. And I sort of tucked myself in and got the car around a little bit. There was no steering at all, and basically went sideways, hit the fence, and flipped over and landed upside down. And I remember opening my eyes and just seeing just white. And I'm thinking, gee, you idiot, you've just gone and killed yourself. I thought, oh my God. I said, oh geez, this is not supposed to happen. And I remember looking at it, and I'm thinking, and then I'm getting covered in stuff, and then I thought,
the senses are starting to come back.
And then I could hear this kid yelling at me that was a bit funny, and he goes, "Hey mister, are you dead?" And I went, "What? Are you dead?" And he said it 3 times. I went, "What? Where?" And I thought, oh my gosh, because at first I thought, when I heard that, I thought, oh my God, I've gone over the fence. I'm in the crowd.
Kids yelling at,
And but it wasn't. And then he said, "Well, I hope you're fucking dead." And I popped the belts and then fell straight on my head because I thought I'll go crook at this kid, But I fell on my head, and I'd got out of the thing, and it was a mess, And I waddled over, and Channel 7 they interviewed me because the Night Thunder program back there, and they couldn't use it because I was just dribbling shit, They didn't understand.
Because you were incoherent?
Yeah, I was concussed. The first impact, that we had no high back seats, your low back seats, and my head rattled on the back of the A on the roll cage, and concussion, but don't tell no one, don't issue your right,
too tough.
And so we basically loaded it up onto the trailer. We had an open trailer, and Martin used to tow it with a Ford Falcon taxi, XD Falcon taxi. That's what he towed the sprint car with. And he built this great big trailer so he could work on it without taking the car off, which is, I don't think it was lazy. I think it was creative. I think it was really, really...
In some ways, Martin was ahead of his time with some of the things, and his car setups were pretty good too at times.
Yeah.
He knew his stuff.
Yeah. And so the very next week was a restricted night, and we went to Claremont, and we were rolling around. So you got one heat and a feature, and we were rolling around for the start of the race, and I was on the front row of the heat race, and I jumped on the gas, and the car jumped 20 feet onto the infield and stopped. Like it was just spun out.
Yeah, right.
And I was so embarrassed, and I went crook at Martin, and he goes, "It's all right, we'll get it sorted, and so his son Michael was there helping and give it a bit of a tweak and altered the chassis and all that sort of stuff. And we were rolling around for the start of the feature, and because it was restricted night, they put me on the front row because I had no points, and the other guys were down the back of the bus. And so we were rolling around for the start of the race, and I was quite really thinking I'm just going to do my best. And as we got around to where the white line, there was no white lines then, but as I got around to where they did, I hit the throttle and the car turned this way, and I
went the other way.
I actually drilled the guy on the outside of me and stuck him through the fence took another couple of cars with him, and anyway I ran away and hid and won the feature. So apologise to those guys, I won't mention their names, but it was such a cool thing in my first year. And that was so we'd started in October, so that was November. So we'd won sort of within a couple of months of us starting. And probably would have won a few more, and it is what it is. I'm forever in debt to Martin for what he did, but we didn't have a budget, and the motors would let us down, and we'd blow on motors like they were going out of fashion, and and it was, but a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything, So, and then after that, we end up with, I guess we finished that season, and then I drove Ken Marriott's car one night, and he said, "Do you want to have a drive?" And Ken was a great supporter of many people in Speedway. Yeah. With Bonds and his daughter Sharon, and Sharon was a very, very fine race car driver herself. Yeah. Really knew her way around the race car and how to pedal a car, and so Ken gave me an opportunity to drive his car one night, and then he said, if you want, so he actually gave me a car to use the next season, which happened to be chassis number 68. Yeah, so the black OTR become a red Marco's car.
Yep, Marco's Pizza.
So we ran that for a season, and it was great because it was a beautiful car. It was good, motor was good, but Ken just said, look, you just got to run it. So we had to, if we broke it, we fixed it, and so my uncle Greg come and helped me. And
how amazing opportunity is that?
It was great.
I think you had like 5 or 6 cars on the go sometimes, Ken.
Oh yeah.
And so, run the car. That's really cool.
Yeah, cool, just loved it, and. So we ran, and then we got time. I don't know what I was thinking, but the Australian Championship was in Canberra, and so we had a crew guy, my Uncle Greg, and Doug McPherson built the engines, and Doug was a good old fella. And Doug says, we said we should go, and Doug goes, yeah, let's go. And again, how stupid. The problem is I didn't really have any money, so I had the money to race the car, and I sort of said to them, okay, we'll all put 500 each in, and then we'll go. Yeah. And everyone did, and Doug couldn't because we didn't want him to anyway. So, and then one of my pit crew guys go, "Oh yeah, I'd love to go," and I said, "That's good because we're using your car." So he towed the car across Australia. So Craig, his name was. So my Uncle Greg and Craig, we put 500 each in, and we went to Canberra. Got some travel assistance. We didn't make the show. It was a diabolical championship. It was terrible. The track was bad and had a lot of. It was real tough on them. Yeah. And then we went to Mount Gambier, and we qualified 12th it was what became the King's Challenge. Yeah, and qualified 12th, which was really cool. I ended up running 6th. I got into 5th, and Bill Barrows and I got into a dogfight for several laps, and Bill was used to messing with people, so he gave me a bit of a short back and sides. And then we went to Warrnambool the next night, and for the classic, and for the prelim night, and we were one of the top qualifiers and ended up being on the front row. We actually had
that's a cool deal.
We had a motor problem when we got to Warrnambool. We stayed overnight, and Gary Warren, another good guy from Portland, he let us stay at his house, and so he looked up. We had all these people that want to help us. John Sidney, who owned the OTR, JSR brand. Yep. He said, so I'll give you a hand with the setup. So what shocks have you got? And I went, these ones. And he goes, yeah, but what are they? And I said, the ones that are on the car. And he looked at me and he goes, what torsion bars have you got? I said, the ones that are in the car. And I wasn't being smart. Very naive. Yeah. And he goes, so you're telling me you've driven from Perth over here and you've got those shock absorbers that are on the car and these torsion bars that are on the car and you've got nothing else? And I went, is this a trick?
What am I supposed to say?
Yeah, and he
and looking back now, you'd be thinking,
oh my God, if anyone did that, I'd give them an absolute tune-up. Do not do that. That's just stupid, So John Sidney gave me a hand, which was really cool, and we ended up being one of the top qualifiers, and we had a heat race, one of the heat races with Gary Rush and John Sydney. There was a magazine called Oval Track.
Yep.
Yep, and John Evans, God bless him. He wrote a story that the race of the year was with Perth upstart or young upstart Gavin Migro and Gary Rush in this heat race because I didn't know, and he'd come up underneath me, and I'd just rail him around the outside, and that's the claim to fame.
Railing, Rush,
And I just kept doing it, and my uncle Greg come afterwards. He goes, "I don't know what you're doing, but just keep doing it, because it's sort of working." And we actually got a bit of we had a few T-shirts and sold some T-shirts.
Is that right? You made it up.
Yeah, we sort of got a bit. People were sort of a bit excited about it,
cool.
So it was just talking about it. The memories were quite cool. So
awesome.
So anyway, on that first night, we end up. Starting up near the front of the feature race, and it was the night before the classic, and I end up I led for ages, and then Danny Smith, some bloke from Danville, Indiana, he won. We ended up winning the classic. Yeah. So he caught me and sort of come underneath me, and I thought, I didn't know who it was. I just drove around the outside again and come underneath me and drove around the outside because with the guys with Claremont, speed was not an issue.
Yeah.
Speed was never an issue for the WA guys. Yeah. But obviously it's very different now because they modified the track after that. But so anyway, I ended up. Danny gave me a short back and sides on the way through, and I ended up running second. So at Warrnambool, so my one and only crack at the classic, and we ran second in the prelim night, And then the next night the track was completely different, and we may as well have been at Gloucester Park at the Trots, I think, because we were wide out to lunch. But we had a great experience, and it was wonderful. So, and the trip when we got back to Perth with the prize money that we'd earned, and you couldn't do it now, the prize money we earned, the travel assistance that we'd got. We got back to Perth, and it had cost me $525 to do the trip.
Wow!
So it was pretty cool. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So
$525.
Yeah, and then after that we drove for the Wojciechowskis from Collie. Great guys, really good car, beautiful car. The white one was my favourite. It was just really nice. And how that ride come about was. Graham Jones from Southside Engine Centre.
Yep.
He gave me basically he was the sponsor of their car, and they were looking to replace Lee Foster, legend of the sport, and they said, Graham Jones. They said, well, who do we get? And Graham Jones said, we'll put Gavin Migro in the car, and they weren't that keen, and that's okay because they probably didn't know me,
Yeah.
And they said, no, we think it'd be good. And so Graham Jones pushed it as the sponsorship part of it. So he pushed it to make it happen. So, and I remember talking to Graham after. I said, why'd you do that? And he goes, your uncle gave me, my uncle Mal gave him his first job at the Sunday Times as a printer.
Oh, right.
And he believed in paying it forward or paying back. Yeah. So I ended up getting that ride, and we won some races. I think we won at Claremont, won at Manjimup. Had a bit of a crash with it, and then ended up getting quite ill, but not from the crash, but it was just the perfect storm. With Crohn's disease and stuff like that with the bowel, and so I ended up having a bit of time out. And then Graham Jones, they said, what do we do? We'll just park it. We want to save it for you. And I said, no, let's put Graham Jones in the car. Let's to make sure that it's all good. And no, he's a speed car guy. And I said, no, Jones is a good fella, and he's a wonderful friend. And so they put Jonesy in the car, and it was the night that Ron Cricky went over the fence. At
Sharon's wheel, I think,
into the pits. And end up, and the doctors actually let me out of hospital as long as I came back. So actually. They said, you can't go, because I was in hospital and had an operation, and for the Crohn's, and the doctor said, well, you can't go unless you can walk down the end of the ward at Royal Perth, and at Sir Charles Gardner, and I said, I can do that, and I really couldn't, and I said, well, if I can walk, so I can go, and he goes, well, not really, and the two nurses were there, and I said, but it's okay, they're going to come with us. And the doctor turned to the nurses. He said, "Is this true?"
Just dogged him running.
And I'm looking at him going, "Please just say yes." And they said, "Yeah, we've agreed." And they didn't. They just did it. They were wonderful, two great girls. So, but I still had to walk down the end of the ward, which was bloody long, and I did it, and then they said, okay, you can go as long as you come back. So they picked me up, Jackie picked me up and the two nurses. Went to the Speedway, and then Jonesy ended up going on to. They cancelled the state title because of the car over the fence and all that. So you wouldn't do it now; they just race. You know what I mean? And Jonesy ended up winning the feature race in my car. So it was really, really cool.
That's really cool.
So the next week we said, look, let's just do it again. So we got there again. The problem is that one of the boys had hopped in the car, and Jonesy always used to make sure the steering wheel was bolted on with a pin. He'd always get in it with the steering wheel on.
Oh, okay.
He'd never ever take it off back in that era. And someone had hopped in the car to move it, or to shift it around, and left the steering wheel unpinned. And when Jonesy was hot lapping, and the thing was motoring, like I'm telling you, it was going flat out. And Jonesy was coming on the back straight, hit the fence, and flipped all the way down the back straight with that car, and just slowly dismantled it. And I walked over to Jonesy because they let me out of hospital again, so I snuck over. And he goes, and they said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, I better talk to my mate here." So he came over. He goes, "You're not going to believe it. The steering wheel come off," and I went, "Oh, gee, like shit." And Jonesy says, "Well," he says, I said, "Why didn't you throw it out? That would have been, if you're crashing, you might as well make it big. You should have just hoofed the steering wheel out." And he started laughing. He said, "But you're all right, if he was okay." So, so we did from there, and I think we had my own car for a little while, and then we ended up with Brian Sadler, which was really cool with Brian, and the performance modifications team. And Brian finally said, "Do you want to come and drive for me?" Which was good. I did my apprenticeship, and he was really good. And we unfortunately had a lot of motor dramas, and the cars we had 6 cars, and 7 motors.
Wow.
So it was a good outfit.
Good setup. Yeah.
And I won a heap of 360 races, struggled with the open competition. That we just had a lot of issues, and then I got a phone call from Bronte Howson, the then boss of AHG, but it wasn't AHG then, but it was AMCAT BBK.
Yep.
And he said, "Oh, what are you doing next year?" And I said, "Oh, just where I am." He goes, I want to what you come up with. So we went and had some lunch with Dad and stuff like that, and sat down and did a bit of a budget and what we could sort of come up with. And he says, "Okay, well we'll cover it, and you're going to drive for Kendrick Racing." And I was a bit shocked. I didn't drink beer then, and if I did, I probably would have had a few beers. But we ended up getting the opportunity to go to Kendrick Racing, and very first night out, won in it, and we won Speed Week, and went to a national title at...
Talk about Speed Week.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Speed Week. Actually, we might come back with Gavin and talk about Speed Week. I've just got to take a little break and thank some of the sponsors. Make sure we're going all good. So it's thanks to A-Steel Powder Coaters, Redline Roll Cages and Race Cars, Ultra Tune Morley, Crewwear Incorporated, Coverall Sheet Metal, Oval Track Merchandise, My Race Setup, and Cash for Containers. Without those guys, we couldn't do this. So we're going to come back with Gavin Migro, talk the Speed Week, the pass on Randy Hannigan, the crash with Gary Brazier, and a few other bits and pieces, and then we'll get into your career as a Speedway manager. Cool. Welcome back to Slightly Sideways. We're talking with the gas man, Gavin Migro, and we'll just pick up where we left off on that one. Gav, the Speed Week title was big. You and Wellesley were sort of going at it for the title, and the Americans were over. You had, I think, Hannigan, Gary Rye, was it?
Yeah, and Kenny
Jacobs. And I was filming for Rapid Images at the time, and I remember you coming into turn 1 in the foul house and getting Hannigan on the outside. It was one of those moves that don't really happen at Claremont all that often, and you're stuck out and you could actually hear the crowd. Must have been an amazing moment for you.
It was. I mean, I would say that's probably my best moment in Speedway, like from a racing point of view. Like, I just thought it was amazing, and the car was great. And it was really interesting because, like, the race was a 25-lap race, I think, and we'd come out of, not quite on the front row, but we're in the middle of the top 5 or 6 or something like that, and we felt really strong, and the car was good, and I remember going down the back straight, and I saw the clock, and I thought, oh geez, we haven't got much time to go, and Randy was really good in his car, and And I remember going past the flag stand and I saw a flag and I thought, I've wasted it. It's the last lap.
Yeah.
So I sort of flat-footed the lap and which was a bit silly. Like it's almost a bit emotive, you know. You sort of, I just want to, worst case, I'm going to get second. It's pretty cool, against the caliber of racer. And then as I went, as I went down the backstraight, I could see there was still like, I guess maybe 3, 4 laps to go, and I thought, okay, settle down, back on your line, back into the line. So I was running, I wasn't running on the pole line, I was running on the edge of the dirt.
Yep.
And the car was amazing, it was just kept hitting those lines. And when we got to that white, I could see the white flag drop down, and I was coming, and I thought, and when we got on the main straight, I was actually talking to myself.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm saying to Randy, turn left, turn left.
Because you wanted him to go down to the bottom of the curb.
Yeah. And because I knew I wasn't going to get him underneath, like it just wasn't going to happen. And when I got up to him, I was going, turn left, Randy, and he did. And he drove in behind a lap car, and I railed him and the lap car. Yeah. And as I went down the backstraight, I thought the motor had shit itself because I could actually hear the roar of the crowd. And people think that's a bit of it's BS,
exactly.
but
no, it's true.
It's actually true. Like it was the motor, and I sort of remember looking at the oil pressure. I said, "Don't do this to me now." Like the oil pressure was good, the water temperature was great, and then come off the turn, got the checkered flag, and the euphoric moment, and the crew and everyone, and Jeff was really happy, and we'd won this race, and. Randy was not happy at all. He said running second was like kissing your sister, and we sort of jokingly said that over the PA, And then we went on to, I think we ran some places, and then we were equal with Wellesley to win Speed Week, so that was a really cool thing.
I remember Fat Rat running up to me, and I filmed the pass and stuff. I thought, that's cool. And then he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and he goes. And I thought something happened, and he goes, "Tell me you got the pass. Tell me you filmed the pass." And I was like, "Yeah, I did, Rat. It's all good." He goes, "Thank God for that, because it was one of those moments that people wanted to see it, again."
Well, the good thing about it, Channel 7, we had a great relationship with Channel 7 and with Channel 10 at the time, and they ran it on the news the next day, and during the week we got interviewed. Wade was working with doing some Channel 7 stuff, and so they came to my work and they interviewed us, and it was really cool. It was a big moment in just for sprint car racing or speedway racing in WA. So and these guys were World of Outlaw guys.
Oh yeah,
they're lifelong friends. Lovely. Gary Wright just got put into the Hall of Fame, and I think it's in Texas for that just this week. And Kenny Jacobs, just the most beautiful guy, amazing guy that you'd ever meet. Him and his family, lifelong friends. Sort of communicate regularly via social media, and Randy Hannigan as well, good fella, and obviously at the back end of his racing, he's still going now, and looking after his boy Mason, and he's doing a good job in micros and stuff like that. So so just a great thing. We really thought that was a cool thing, and then after that we went to the Australian title, I think at Mount Gambier, and I ended up, I qualified for the race. Car was a little tight. We didn't quite get the setup right. The track was didn't really suit us. We had a double reverse arm car Murphy, and it was very tight race car, but I loved it, just absolutely loved it. So we ended up going upside down, unfortunately, in the title race. And then on the way back, Jeff's truck blew up. And then to get it towed into Kalgoorlie, so we missed the next race meeting at Claremont.
Yep.
And Jeff had swapped motors. He gave me Ron's engine and that stuff, and I really liked the engine that I won Speed Week with. But that's just part of me wanting to win, and I was passionate. He was passionate, so we were butting heads a little bit on it. And I ended up. We had the state title when we come back, and that was our first race meeting, and the motor combination, my combination, it wasn't working for that night, and so we were still doing okay. I think we're running 4th or 5th or something like that, and there was I think it was a restart or whatever, and then I sort of had a bit of a coming together with Shane Cricky, and it wasn't his fault or anyone's fault.
This is one of the main straight I was
it was
like Shane tagged the curb.
The curb and just got into the side of me.
Yeah, you and Pino, I think, was in there,
and then Scott Milling as well, and so
Brazier did Brazier have a flat tyre?
Yeah.
And was told like he wanted to change. He pulled up at the pit gate, if I remember.
Yeah.
And they were changing the tyre, and your dad actually, I think, went out in the four wheel and said, "Get off," and he changed the tyre, and as they were pushing him off, the car started, and he just got back in the field because we're running late on time, I think.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure about that part because obviously I was in the car, but from what I can gather, I think they'd shown the black flag and said, look,
get off.
Yeah, the rule is the rule. It's unfortunate, but that's the rule. And I think time was an issue.
Yeah.
And anyway, we end up, I got tangled up and got hit by Scotty Milling, and it sort of pushed me into the path of Gary, who was doing 120 miles an hour.
He did not back off. I filmed that one as well, and it was on Made Sports World. But that was, why I'm bringing that up is that's probably the hardest hit that you would have taken in any race car.
Oh, yeah.
It was sickening, really.
Yeah, it fractured my back. My scaphoid bone on my hand, I still think doesn't work. and I had an ankle injury as well, and so it was pretty nasty. And like in 20 years of racing, that was the only time I ever got carted off in an ambulance. But I walked to it, and I probably shouldn't have because I didn't know I had a fractured back, you know. Yeah. But I knew there was something bad with my hand, and the car did its job, but it was wrecked, you know. And but we were upside. I went upside down or whatever, and slammed up against the fence, and Gary was upside down and stuff like that. And a lot of people said, "Oh, you know, Gary never came back because you know your dad wouldn't have him because you crashed." But that was never the case. It was just circumstantial at all, you know. Yeah. Gary's a great racer.
Hell of a racer.
You know, ended up being
and showman.
Yeah, and 6 times Australian champion, that sort of stuff. You know, like so he's. You know, it was just one of those shit things that, you know, yes, they shouldn't have done what they did, but if I didn't crash, I would never have been hit. So those things do happen.
And they're competitive races. They want to come here to race.
Yeah.
So you're lucky not to catch fire because he hit the tail tank, basically. Yeah. But you jump around a bit, but you did catch fire at the Australian tile at Bunbury. I think you were running 4th, flipped, and that would have been a scary moment.
Yeah, I was running 3rd. Max was leading, Ron was 2nd, and I was 3rd. Yep. And I didn't realise and saw a video someone did on the other day on the Claremont Speedway page, and I forgot that I was actually the highest point scorer after the first night. Okay. And so we were going pretty well, and when the title race came, I felt so comfortable. The car was amazing. It was actually Gary Wright's Jenkins car. Yep. Had Des Ferris's Gertie engine, which was Randy Hannigan's the Hurricane engine.
Yeah, right.
So I was feeling really good, and I remember just looking up, and this was my recollection, and I'm thinking, you know, like I'm catching Ron, I'm catching Max, you know, I'm coming here, right, you know, really, and if you don't feel like you can win, you shouldn't be doing it, you know, like, and I really felt like I could win, you know, and so when I was catching Ron like really good, and we were only 13 laps in, lucky 13, and. Kerry Madsen, we were lapping him, and he was flipping a lot. I didn't know, he was in a black car. Yeah. He was flipping along the main straight, and I think Peter Addard was slowing down because clearly the lights were going to come on, but we didn't know that because the lights hadn't come on yet, and being the black car, perhaps no one really saw it. And when we got it to the end of the main straight, Addard, Ron ran into the back of Addard and spun and went up the track, and I hit Ron sort of. Well, he was going backwards and I was going forward. I didn't want to drive into the cockpit. I mean, Ron and I didn't like each other then, but you don't want to hurt anybody. No, you know, we're actually really great mates now. And I clipped the side of it and then flipped over onto the fence and landed the fuel tank up on the fence and came down. I was upside down and I could hear this big woofing noise, and I thought, what's that? You know, and then I realised I had methanol dripping off my nose and I was soaked in it. Wow. I was completely soaked.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
So I remember seeing a guy with a pair of legs like shorts, and I said, "You're all right, mate. I'll just get out." And he goes, "No, we'll just turn you over." I said, "No, just let me get out." And he goes, "No, we'll turn you over." And I sort of had a bit of an argument with him. I said to leave it alone. So I dropped the thing, and as I landed in the wing, the thing was full of methanol. Like it was, so I was completely covered in fuel. So I got out and then walked off in a big hurry, and then it. When they tipped it over, she went up. So it burnt everything. Like it burnt the seat upholstery, the cage nets out of it, the seat belts, and that was just in a flash fire, you know. So I was thinking to myself, if I was sitting there, even though I had Nomex underwear and triple layer suit, it would have been in a bit of strife. So not nice, but memory, you can have a few beers and talk shit about it. So it's a bit of humour.
Oh, that's what we're
yeah.
Fast forward a little bit to the end of an era at Claremont. What was that like for you, going through that part? Because I remember like interviewing you a little bit on the first night of the 2 last nights. But that must have been very emotional, obviously, being around your dad too, and yourself, how to deal with all that, and you know.
Yeah, look, it's really difficult because we were so excited about getting the Motorplex, and and you know, I remember Dad saying to me, you know, he said, oh, every night at Claremont, he had his heart in his mouth, thinking something could happen at Claremont, and you know, we don't know, but you know, like you know, the danger and the fence and the catch nets and all that sort of stuff, and the danger of the venue, you know, because it was, whilst everyone sits there and says it was wonderful, it was a great era. But the reality is, it was not very safe, and it was not going to be. It's not going to get any better. Yeah. So to move to where we got to now is amazing. But so it was a tough time. But our vision was just like focused on the end game of we're getting to get this new venue, and we knew the stuff going on in the background. You know, with the then Premier Richard Court was just amazing. You know, the ministers that he put in control of that whole situation to make it all happen, and to even get us a reprieve at Claremont for a couple of years was amazing. But the time, like myself and Peter Pike, the WA's greatest drag racing manager, just the most passionate guy that you ever, best front of house guy that you'd ever imagine. I learnt so much from him, and Pikey. We were like kids in a candy store, just thinking how this end game is going to come, and we're going to get to play with this new toy, and this is going to be great. And the legacy of obviously Con, my dad and Gary, how it was actually going to, that was going to remain for the sport for forever, test the time, Yeah. So from that point of view, we just kept thinking about the end game, and probably didn't really know the magnitude of it until we saw that crowd on those last 2 nights. And the Royal Agricultural Society wouldn't let us run on Saturday night because we had to finish on March 31. You're out of there. Yeah. So April 1 was a Saturday. So that's why we ran Thursday, Friday. It was ridiculous. Yeah, absolutely
splitting
ridiculous.
hairs like stupid.
Yeah. So they wouldn't let us run. So that's why we ran Thursday and Friday. We filled the joint both nights. Yeah. And it was a wonderful night, and we ran really late. We put on more races than we ever could, and we didn't care. What are they going to do? Kick us out? Go for it, So and the Premier's there anyway, so we were good. But it was a wonderful night to wind down the curtain on the old girl. Yeah. But then we moved to the new place, and got. Some may disagree, but we've certainly got something that's far better, and the racing's better. The cars are amazing. The modern day heroes are amazing. What they do is we're just blessed that Dad's communication with the politicians, his celebrity status really that opened so many doors. I remember Gary used to say, I can't believe how Dad could pick up the phone and speak to the Premier. Gary could never work that out, because Dad would just pick up the phone, and next thing you know, just a moment, I'll just put you through to his PA, and next thing you know, the Premier picked up the phone. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it's pretty powerful. It is, and it's just his communication on the phone and that sort of stuff is just. There's no one in the sport has been able to achieve those things,
Going from Claremont to the Motorplex, I guess no matter what area you would have done it in, people aren't ready for it in some way, because Claremont was there for 70-something years or whatever, and then the history of that, you can't compare it when you go. It's a completely different thing, and the Motorplex first couple of years would have been very much a struggle, I think, to educate. Obviously, there was no train to get there, and then you had to try to get some sort of transport to get people there, but trying to educate people to come, different type of racing, different type of surface, the whole thing. I think that now has waned. I think that 100%. It's been 20 years of starting to build its own history. Yeah. Because when I remember back my era, say it'd be like, the best stuff was in the 80s, but the track had already been there 50 years. Yeah. Whatever. Yep. So now the Motorplex is there 20 years, it's starting to build that history and those things.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, it was a wonderful time, 73 years, and it should always be honoured and noted. But when we went to Kwinana, we didn't even know it was going to be there. We were thinking they'd looked at Forestfield, they'd looked at Cudale marshalling yards where the BP terminals and that are. Yeah. These were all basically all but signed off on that was going to happen.
Yeah. So many rumours out there at the time too. When it's going to be there, it's going to be this.
Forestfield, where the big wheat silos and all that sort of stuff is. There was the Perth Airport scenario that was close to there. There was a naughty turtle there that didn't want to have a speedway and a drag strip there, so that's why that didn't happen. Then just near, basically in the Whiteman Park precinct, that was another discussion point. And then on the eve of it all happening, they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're proud to announce Kwinana," and we went, "Oh, Kwinana? What? Do you understand where we live? This is not going to work," So we went down there and put all our, we went down there with all our passion and had a great team. Gary and Dad had a great team of people that all really roared into it and put in huge, ridiculous hours. It sounds fun because we're still doing it now, but in summer. But we, with the passion that we put that team together, put that venue, and then on that first night, we had a 4-tiered ticketing system. The general admission, bronze, silver, gold, and it was noisy, and there was there was queues back. There was freeway was blocked.
The track wasn't settled in.
No, and so we had all these things going on, and then people were trying to buy a ticket, and they go, "I don't know. When we get into Claremont, we just buy a ticket." And they go, "Well, you can go on the pits, can you? I didn't know that." Well, you can buy. Oh no, I just want a ticket. So they buy a ticket, and we had 9,800 people on that first night. Yeah. Right. And I think 8,800 were jammed into the general admission area because they didn't know.
No. Yeah.
And now most of our ticket sales are silver, which is pit access because people get access to it. So 22 years later, it's actually wonderful now. And if anyone wanted to change the way our ticketing system is, I'd fight them to the death because it works. And Gary and Dad, what they did with that was well before its time. And now we've gone beyond that. And so, but the Claremont faithful came there and it wasn't the same, and I get it because they had that that familiar old hot dog stand and they could see the Ferris wheel or the little things, the trees in Farhouse Corner and the light towers, all those little things that meant so much to them. It wasn't the same anymore for them, and we spent the first few years trying to get them to come. And I'll be honest, I actually said to Gary one day, I said, "I think we need to stop. We need to just focus on the new breed, because they've already made their mind up, And the moment we did that, it took 10 years, really, 8 years. Yeah. And then I remember him saying to us one day, "Do you think if we knew that it was going to take this long, would we have done it?" And and Dad did his 3 years there. Yeah. And I sort of said to him, I said, "Well, it was your money, but I would have thought that you wouldn't have done it if you knew it was going to take 8 years." And he agreed. He said, "I think we probably would have walked away, Yeah, right. And that would have been terrible for the game at the time."
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, we got the venue up and running, and it took a long time to turn it around. But look, there was a period of time, and I'm sharing it with you, and your viewers and listeners. I sort of I loved Claremont because that was where 17 of my 20-year racing career was at Claremont. But then there was a part of it that I was resenting it because it was that holding us back. Yeah. And I thought, please, people, can't you see what we see?
It's like the legend on a chain of ball. It's cool, but it was cool in that era. We need to get going.
And I liken it to, like your grandparents. You loved your grandparents, and they were lovely, and you have those very fond memories, but they're not here anymore. Yeah. And that's like saying when you have a baby or a child, what, you don't like them? You know what I mean? He's the new child. I don't like you. I like my nana boy. And so I sort of liken it to that. And then in the end, when we started focusing on, we're just going to get on with it, and we've got new heroes now. and you know the look at the late models, what they've done, and how we've got the best late models outside of North America. I just love it. We've got a track that is designed and made for them. The sprint car racing is the speed and the slide jobs, and the Callum Williamsons and the Jason Kendricks and the Dan Hardings, you know, the Priolo boys, you know, and Young Inglis, you know, like these guys, what they're doing now. Is just, and I'm a super fan. I just think this is so cool because
we get spoiled. I honestly think some people out there that would be like spoilt on what's going on because it becomes normal. But really, when you look back at some of the other racing around Western Australia and Australia, the Motorplex is anything but normal. Like the racing there each week, you might get, say you go to a country track, we won't name any, but you might get 1 or 2 good races the whole night.
Yep.
Okay. Which is a close finish, or you know, someone slides someone for the position.
Yeah.
But the Motorplex, you get 15 or 20 of them the whole, you know, out of 30 races.
I remember having a conversation with Ken Brown, you know, the legendary stats man, you know, and I said to Brownie after the first year, I said, well, Ken, I said, I think we've seen more passing manoeuvres at the Motorplex than we saw in the 73-year history of and he started laughing. He goes, it's so true. And it is true. But I love the people who have their passion and their memories, but that's just like saying Subiaco Oval was better than Optus Stadium. You're actually, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
You're wrong. Yeah.
You know, like we have got the greatest stadium. I mean, how good is WA? We've got the greatest stadium on the planet for AFL. I do say the AFL Grand Final should still be at MCG, but that stadium is the greatest stadium on the planet for oval, and we're blessed to have one of the world's best speedway tracks right here in Perth.
Yeah.
And I pinch myself every time I drive in it. I've got some great young team members that on my team, you know, young Mikey and Aiden. I've got great people, you know, that are our officials. You know, your brother Jerome's a great steward, and you know, Scotty Beattie, the award winner. You know,
you got to put that in there.
You know, and our, you know, Coxie and Fab and Maddie, you know, we've got ET in the pits. We've got such a great team, and all the people that are around them that we have such a mature group and youthful group, and it's just mint. And I love their passion, but I think they feed off me as well. So I think it's such a good thing, you know. So I just, you know, we are so blessed to have this great venue and to see these heroes, what they're doing today. You know, the Speed Car boys, you know, Cade Manders and Tommy Payett, and you know, and you know, Crackers Fleming and stuff like that. So you know, we've got some really great stuff, you know, happening within our sport in this state. It's just amazing, and the legacy is really of what Dad produced all those years ago. You know, a lot of tracks will have, you go to America, you've been and you watch sprint cars. Yep. You know, and then you go to another racetrack and you just watch late models.
Yeah, there's only one division or maybe 2, but
if you're lucky.
Yep.
And then you get speed cars, you know. And whereas, you know, we bravely put on sprint cars, late models and speed cars and your Formula 500s and your wingless, and you know, and sometimes we bite off, we think we bite off more than we can chew, but we always get it done. Yeah. But when you've got a good racetrack, as in the track surface, which young Mikey is just a little magician on. Yeah. No pressure, Mikey, don't get it wrong.
No pay rise for you, by the way.
So, you know, when we get those things, it works out. You get a good track and all those things take care of itself, you know. So it's a great thing, absolutely great thing.
We're going to take a break and finish up with Gavin Migro for part number 2, I think. We're having a good chat here, so I think we can keep continuing on with this one, but we'll come back and talk about what it's like to work at the Motorplex, as like when you started off admin with your dad kind of thing, and then becoming the Speedway manager, the different management setups that you've been under, and the development of the Motorplex, and this year's calendar.
Great.